Hallo, ich bin Götz Otto und mit meiner alten Feuerwehr unterwegs durch Europa. Ich habe als Schauspieler schon in vielen europäischen Orten arbeiten dürfen, habe mit vielen Kollegen vor Ort gesprochen, mich ausgetauscht und Zeit verbracht. Über die Bedeutung Europas für uns als Kulturschaffende haben wir uns dabei nicht unterhalten. Denn wenn man Menschen fragt, was Europa für sie definiert, dann gibt es eine Sache, auf die sich alle einigen können: den gemeinsamen Kulturraum. Aber was macht den aus? Was ist europäische Kultur? Welche Rolle spielt sie für uns alle? Also habe ich mich auf den Weg gemacht. Ich suche Verbindendes und Trennendes. Vor allem aber möchte ich Lust machen auf das europäische Projekt. Ich frage Menschen, die mir unterwegs begegnen.
What do you like about Europe? Freedom. Yeah, freedom.
I love to entertain people, make people smile, make people laugh. That also makes me feel good.
You made me smile and laugh.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Und ich unterhalte mich mit Menschen, die Spannendes über Europa oder europäische Entwicklungen erzählen können.
Ein schönes Beispiel dafür, wie die Energiewelt sich auch wandelt.
It's also Europe. That's for me punk, freedom. Do whatever you want.
If you would be king of Europe, well, let's say
I would be queen
the
because-
leader. Oh well, yeah, queen too.
Oder mit Menschen, mit denen ich schon arbeiten durfte.
It's so deep in ourselves. It has to do with history, a lot to do with history. That's what I discovered when I moved to Belgium.
Well, if Belgium is the answer, what was the question?
Jetzt geht Europa unter die Haut.
Denn ich finde Europa großartig. Als Friedens- und Gesellschaftsprojekt.
Yeah, hurt me.
Unterwegs mit Götz Otto in Europa. Go Europe!
Europe.Now.
Europe.Now.
Hi, hello, dear fellow Europeans and Earthlings. We greet you in the name of the European Federalists, Europe Direct Vienna and BEJ Austria. Again, in English, despite the trailer in the beginning was in German. So, as always, you can chat with us in German and English. And due to our special guest who is coming up today, you can chat with us in 6 languages. But wait a little bit until she's here, please. So what are we having in mind today? We travel through Europe. Most probably all of us in these days dream of traveling, of holidays, and we will just travel with you through Europe and through all those aspects that accompany traveling, be it trains and trucks and, infrastructure and borders and whatever. Dear Götz, you have just traveled through Europe. You were on a mission, so to say. We could see you in the video clip that was shown before. And we will talk about your road trip a little bit more, a little bit later. But in the beginning, I'd like to pose you the general question. What's your feeling about Europe these days after all the experiences of your trip?
Well, as a matter of fact, I didn't travel Europe. I just traveled 3 countries of Europe, which is like my first, let's say, the first slope of what I'm intending to do. And yeah, it was fantastic. Actually, it was really, it was very, because I was looking what I'm doing in that documentary. I'm looking for the European cultural area, because this is what everybody can, where everybody can say, yes, I find myself, if we're talking about Europe, we're sharing the same cultural background. And I was looking for that specific cultural background on my trip. So I was asking many people on the streets, but also so-called cultural workers who are working in the cultural business. And my general feeling was that everybody was really extremely positive about Europe itself and about what it stands for. And I was really surprised, and which is a good thing. It's I expected to have more against wind, so to say, and but it turned out to be quite nice, and I was really surprised, and that everybody is considering Europe being a positive thing. But Nana, what's new in Europe apart from the fact that so many things happen on the road, but in general, what's new in Europe?
What's new in Europe? I try to figure out what's new in the transportation policy in the European, because this is kind of suiting to our topic today. And I would like to start with some basics. Transportation is, of course, a cornerstone of European integration. That's clear. It is vital for fulfilling the premise of free movement of individual services and goods, which is one of those great things we achieve through being part of the EU. And transport is, of course, also a major contributor to the economy. And the transport policies, that's very interesting. The aims are very simple. They try to make transport more safe and sustainable, be it for services, for goods, and for people. So the EU tries generally to reach that development through modern infrastructure, to make journeys more quick, or to make, for example, transportation of goods more efficient by digital solutions. And the general overall rule is that the EU tries to actually fulfill the so-called Fit for 55 package. And if you don't know what that is,
I don't know what this
may
is.
explain that just in a half sentence. This is like a roadmap to ensure that the EU reduces its emissions by 55% until 2030, which is quite quick. So they have a lot of ideas, and the European Commission just proposed a greening freight legislative package this July to make that happen. This is, I think, interesting as an example what is happening on the European level, and how is transportation connected to climate politics, and how does European politics try to achieve the goals. Because, for example, just give some examples of that. Legislative package for the transportation sector. They try that transportations by trains should be logistically thought through better and more digitalized, so that, for example, when there is a sudden change, when one transport is cancelled, immediately there can be a second one closing the gap, so that there are no pausing cost money and costing energies. Another point.
That's very interesting, because I think that's because you have all those national societies. You have the Deutsche Bahn, you have the ÖBB, you have the Société Nationale des Chemins de Fer. You have all those different. Let's say sometimes they're privatized, sometimes they're state-owned, and from the administration of the EU to say this has to do. Oh, that's very interesting how they're gonna how that's gonna been worked out through.
To really add to that, the EU invests a lot in this so-called trans-European infrastructure. It's one of the main aims of a unified European train network. And it needs to be technically harmonized. This is one of the challenges. And also to allow easy connections across borders. And the European high-speed train network also is being further developed. It consists in 2021 on 11,000 kilometers. I found that very interesting. And there are several mega project on these days on making those high-speed train networks more efficient, and also harmonizing the streets. But one point I would like, a last point on that transportation policy news is, I would like to point out, it's truckers. You're friends with a lot of truckers. I heard trucker ladies also, so perhaps that might concern them. And there is one part of this EU law proposal that trucks with so-called zero emissions, I didn't even know that they exist. So those are electrical or hydrogen-driven trucks. They, in future, can be heavier. They can transport 44 tons instead of only 40 tons. In all your experience with truckers and trucker ladies, did you have the impression that climate protective measures would be taken into consideration at all?
I think, as a general thought, well, let me put that right. Why do I know trucker ladies?
Yeah, that might sound strange.
Weird. There is a German TV format called Trucker Babes. It's called Trucker Babes, and I'm friends with the producer. And so when we were talking about making this emission about travel and traveling through Europe, I thought, well, that could be fantastic to talk to one of those ladies. And I talked to a couple of them, but unfortunately, their English is really bad, so they won't be able to make to actually talk to us in English, and we don't have somebody who's translating meanwhile talking. I can't do that, and so we made the decision not to have one of those ladies here, which is a pity. But at least I spoke to them. But honestly, environmental issues are not in the center of their daily thought concept. Let me put it that way. They're talking about that. It has to do with fuel. Yes, less fuel is interesting, but the environment is not really an issue.
Do you know about other concerns they have these days? I don't know. Is it difficult to travel? Is the traffic awful? Is the infrastructure complicated, or are they happy?
They have huge problems with bureaucracy, especially when it comes to European to transports that actually affect the European administration, because not every good has a contact to. If a potato is a potato anywhere, and we have norms. We were talking about that later, that define what a potato is. So that is, but as soon as it comes to more difficult things, those administrational things still are a bureaucracy, is still a topic.
All right. So from my side, that was my news that I had about the transportation connected policies of the EU.
And normally, I'm supposed to ask you, so do you have any good news? But partially, this was good news already.
Somehow this was good news, but it's not a finalized good news, because this was only a proposal by the European Commission so far. So it has to be, discussed, and then it has to be negotiated and whatever. Anyway, of course, there are specifically good European news, and I'm glad you asked. So I got 3 good European news for all of us. And the first one, I was a bit kind of positively impressed when I read that Europe's economy is not in a too bad of a shape these days. I don't know if you knew that the European Commission had published just a report about employment rate and social development in Europe, and it says that we can count with a 3.5 plus in economy these years, and this despite of the war in Ukraine and high energy prices, and that 213.7 million people are working. That equals a record high of 74.6% employment rate. So these are not lots of numbers, but there is one number that made me think. About 10% of the young people between 15 and 24, they are neither working nor in school or education. Götz, what do you think those young people are doing every day?
You know what? As a matter of fact, there are some studies who connect these figures to the corona pandemic. Many students, or let's say young people who finished their studies in that time, they have difficulties finding a new perspective, because there is no, let's say, no social energy coming out of the other pupils or the other students. So if you finish your school and your neighbor is asking, so what are you doing? And you're discussing things and all that. So because nowadays this doesn't happen, or not now, it happens again, but during Corona, this was not possible. So they were sitting in front of their computers the entire day, because they had remote lessons, and they finished their lessons and now they're somehow stuck. So a lot in Germany, I know that it's 50,000 students, pupils who left school, who are missing somehow from from the figure side. So what are they doing? I have no clue. Maybe they're twitching.
I hoped actually that you would give me some good European news and say, I don't know, they are all chilling and they are doing some sensible, I don't know, work with each other and cheering up each other, or doing something nice, chilling in the sofa area. Anyway, to come back to the good European news, I have two more for you. There is one which I really thought interesting, and this is actually something that will happen, and it puts the so-called circular economy into practice. Just this week, a new law on more sustainable, circular and safe batteries entered into force. And also transportation will depend high on batteries. So that is really important. And the new law ensures in the future that batteries must have a low carbon footprint and must use minimal harmful substances, must need less raw materials from non-EU countries, must be, and I think this is most interesting, collected, reused and recycled at a high degree. And consumers, starting in 2027, will be able to remove and replace the portable batteries in their electronic products at any time of the life cycle. So this will extend the life cycle of the products before they can be disposed, and it will encourage reuse also and will reduce consumer waste. And also there will be a label where all the elements of information of the battery will be put on, and a QR code who will provide something like a digital passport. I mean, this almost sounds too bureaucratic, but on the other hand, it might be practical.
Every battery is identifiable.
Yes.
Oh, hello.
And third good news, just in a quick way, Norway finds Meta. I don't know if you read it.
Norway finds Meta.
Yeah, Meta is the owner of Facebook, just for the older ones amongst us. And they have to pay, started, I think, 2-3 days ago, 100,000 euros a day for privacy breaches. And the fine will run until November the 3rd. And there is an option of prolonging it if the European Data Protection Board agrees with the Norwegian's regulators. And the decision that in the end could have a wider European implication, of course. And I had the association, why not fine big global companies instead of taxing us poor citizens? What do you say?
Absolutely. And the only bad thing about only bad news about the good news you just said is that Norway is not part of the EU. But apart from that, it's good.
Well, there seems to be an exchange process with the European side. So there's something happening. Yeah.
They're very close. But the rich Norwegians, they don't want to spend money on the EU. I totally understand that. No, that's great. I think but you know, the biggest problem we're talking about here, and we won't solve that today, that's for sure. The biggest problem, if it comes down to those kind of things, is taxes. And we still have so many different tax versions, tax systems in Europe, that it's very hard to actually tax a company like Meta or Apple or whatever for what their purchases here in Europe. They try it. Every national or some national tax authorities try that. Just for example, like Norway, but it's very difficult to put this on a European agenda, since we have so many different European tax systems.
Well, differences is also a very good clue to welcome our guest of today. She is a true multinational citizen, a global citizen, a true European. Hello, hello. Here comes Ewa Kasp. We can see you in a second. Hi, here you are.
Hello.
Hi, Ewa. May I introduce you a second to all our viewers? You're born in Warsaw in Poland and grew up in Vienna, Austria. You studied, and here comes a big double point, theater, film and media, as well as creative writing and directing in Vienna, Paris, New York, Toronto and Warsaw. You worked as actress in international productions, as a video journalist and a social media producer. And on Instagram, you have impressive 200,000 plus followers. You speak incredibly 6 to 7 languages: German, Polish, English, French, Russian, Spanish. And Portuguese, I think it was the the seventh in work. And
I don't know. It wasn't Portuguese. It wasn't Portuguese.
well, you will remind. So we again ask the chat, please talk to us today in all languages that you can think of. We will be really wanting to challenge Ewa. And anyway, you're literally a multinational person, and very good news that you're coming to us. And I would like to start with a question to you. How do you experience yourself as a European, or would you rather think you're a global citizen?
I think by now I think of myself as a global citizen just because I spent 9 years in Canada and then I spent time in the US. But before I left, I definitely saw myself always as a European. I saw myself as a Varsovian because I was born in Warsaw. And then I saw myself as Viennese because I grew up in Vienna, because I got to Austria when I was 2 years old. So I was very little. And I always was between these two countries and cultures. And I never, ever, when I was little, I didn't even realize, like I just embraced everything, and the people embraced me as I was. And that was wonderful. And that's how that's how I got to love Europe. And then I went to Paris and I loved Paris and I had a fantastic time. And yeah, I just expanded on my love for Europe.
That is great. We'll let that.
By the way, that's also a question that I very often, when I'm on my tour, I'm asking the people if they consider themselves being their own nationality or their city or European, and most people answer, I would call myself being a Varsovian, for example, or a Wiener or whatever. Most of the time they refer more to their home city than actually the country.
Yes, I think also because cities, they kind of take on a life of their own. I feel like every bigger city is a little bit different than the rest of the country. I think also that the countryside might agree with that as all, like the Viennese, they're not very much liked, or the Varsovians or the Torontonians. So maybe that's that. Like, I've always been a city kid, and maybe that's why I always like have a better rapport, like not rapport, but like I feel more at home within the city environment. Yeah, maybe that's what that is. I don't know.
You traveled a lot, so you got a lot of experiences all over the world, but especially also in Europe, not only by like the most of us who are just traveling for holidays, but you really lived and studied and worked abroad within Europe. What are your experiences? How is Europe feeling? How is the cultural space in Europe? Is it easy to travel by train? What experiences did you have with Erasmus? And does it help to speak so many languages? Do you understand people better? I have so many questions.
It definitely, I don't know which one, I start from the back. It definitely does. It opens doors. Once you speak a language, for me, languages are like codes, and I like kind of cracking them and breaking them and understanding better. So it definitely helps. The travel part, I mean, for me, Europe, as long as you personally try to be open-minded and embrace the culture you're in. For example, when I moved to Paris, I thought I spoke a little bit of French because I learned it in school for 6 years, but it turned out I didn't speak anything. So once I started Erasmus, I really immersed myself. I lived with French people, which was lovely, and that was the biggest help ever. And then I started reading books and doing grammar exercises. I was never that disciplined, but with French, I actually tried. So you got to put in the work in order to learn it. But I think when you put in the effort to know the culture, know the people, they're very friendly and they are trying to help out. And I think this is how connections are made and friendships are made. So just go somewhere with an open heart and open mind and try to embrace the place you're at. And then I'm sure you'll find your people. There you go.
No matter in what language. Okay.
No matter in what language.
But if you try, then it's better.
I was in Japan. I mean, with technology nowadays, it's just amazing. I was in Japan last year at this film festival, and I had my iPhone, and I bought specifically for that, I bought a SIM card, so I had data the whole time, and I spent a whole evening just talking through my translator with somebody who didn't speak English, and I didn't speak any Japanese, and we communicated. It was so lovely. It takes a while, but you know, it doesn't take that long now. So yeah, you can even do it without speaking the language because you have help
Absolutely.
with technology. Yeah.
Communication has not necessarily to do with the ability to understand each other. It has more to do with the ambition, I think. Then if you really want to understand, if you want to communicate, that you will find a way. If you don't want to communicate, you can speak the same language and you won't talk and you won't communicate. You will stay in your world. So
Absolutely.
Sometimes the traveling, it can be a bit difficult through Europe. We talked about that in the beginning, that, you know, traveling by train, especially the Deutsche Bahn, seems to have some problem, one or the other. But also, of course, all the other it's not easy going across borders, traveling. So I would like to propose an idea of talking about, the digital space as a common public space. And you're actually in the digital space, you're kind of a famous person. And the community is huge. How would you describe the digital space as a space to meet people or to connect? Is it something that is real, or is it something that is just, I don't know, fake, as to say the opposite? Is it a European space, or is it a global space?
I think well, if we're talking about like my Instagram and then the content that I create, it's several times I've reached global reach, so the world gets very small. It's very interesting because I can see basically my content travel. I can see, oh, it hit the US, or it hit the Philippines, or it's in Malaysia, or it's in India. I can actually see by the comments, and I can see by the people who also like write me DMs, or so I can really see that traveling, and it really makes the world tiny. And it's lovely. And sometimes from those virtual encounters I have with people, they do become real. I just recently met somebody who is into film. She wants to produce something. And she was passing in Vienna, and we met for dinner. And that was lovely. Like we just chatted, like we had chatted before, just through Instagram, and then we met in real life. So there's real connections to be made. Yeah, for sure. Sometimes it's easier to travel on like virtually to travel in Europe, especially right now with the prices and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Götz, is there anything going through your mind?
Yeah, well, that we were talking about Corona earlier, and I think Corona changed also the idea of communicating with people whilst being at home. I think that is what we are doing right now. I'm sitting in Munich. You guys are sitting in Vienna, and we're still having a personal chat. I think that has also to do with not only with the technical possibilities, but also with the what's the English word? Well, not even the German word comes into my mind. Let's say the awareness, the acceptability, that people are accepting that this is a personal talk we're having right now. I would say 2-3 years ago, that would have been, no, that's instant. A personal talk has to be personal. I have to touch somebody. No, you don't have to, because technical device is helping you there, and it works as well.
That is interesting. I used to give my hand to everyone, and now I never give my hand to anyone.
That's true. That's true. I think,
handshakes. I don't do it anymore.
I think that's a little bit sad. I feel like in Austria you have the kiss left, kiss right, Boosting right, which in English sounds a bit funny. And now I feel I find myself like kind of awkwardly hugging people, like with like one like with just one arm. Like the kisses are sort of sometimes fading away, which I find quite sad. Yeah, I wouldn't want that to die out. Yeah.
No, and as you just, I mean, you have so many different ways of greeting each other, and it would be so, I mean, the Asians, and you have the fist, and you have so many different things, hugging, kissing. The Swiss kiss each other 5 times before starting the first word. This is why they're so slow. And it would be a pity if we miss all that. And I think it's coming back. Definitely, it's coming back.
Well, we're talking about Europe and traveling, transportation, trains. Any train stories or road stories from you? Götz, train stories from both of you. How do you experience borders and Europe from the road, from the trains?
When I was, because my grandparents, may I start? Sorry.
Go ahead, go
Okay,
ahead,
thank
sure.
you. When I was little, we used to travel a lot to Poland because my grandparents lived close to Katowice, so we would always go by car, which was very tedious back then because of the borders and everything. And now, when I go and visit my family, I mostly go by train. Which to Katowice it takes like 5 hours. It's really quite nice. Sometimes it's a problem. I feel like in Europe, I feel like Europe hasn't figured quite out yet, like between the countries. Like the trains work well within, but then sometimes when I go to Katowice in Czechia, we stop like 12 times. So I'm not quite sure why. I mean, because they need to take more people, but I feel like the cities could communicate better in order to have a faster service. It's nice to travel by train. Sometimes it's just a bit expensive.
I think
I can say that. Yeah.
I think to answer a little bit here, the problem is that in Europe, as we were talking about before, you have privatized train companies. And if they're privatized, like for example in Britain, it's privatized, they can do whatever they want to do. They don't have to refer to state restrictions, and for sure they're thinking about norms and all that. For example, the tracks are have different sizes in the different countries, so they're definitely thinking about that. But what their first aim is to make money. And their first aim is not to have a good service. Their first aim is to make money. And for example, in Germany, when they were trying to privatize the German Deutsche Bundesbahn, and go public and go public, and so they sold everything that costed them money. For example, Ausweichgleise. Well, I don't know the word Ausweichgleise. I'm extremely sorry.
Ewa.
Ausweichgleise, bitte.
Well, Gleise is train tracks and Ausweichen is to
avoid tracks. Okay, so they got rid of all the areas where they had avoid tracks, which is not a problem since and the entire system is fairly old. So they try to all the maintenance was pushed away, and nowadays it's really bizarre. So because the Deutsche Bundesbahn, which is a private organization, they only have to pay for the maintenance, but the state comes in if they build new tracks. So what they do is in Germany, for example, they let everything rotten for so long that the state has to rebuild things. So, but that's a very typical German thing. So you have all those different countries in Europe who have more or less the same or equivalent topics. And so this is why I said before, it's very difficult to build a European railway system. That's very difficult since you not only have 26 states, you also have different privatized companies. Very long, sorry for that.
We see now sliding tracks here in the chat. Thank you so much for that translation. And we see another chat input that many meetings are now done without flights, and this is great. Ewa, actually, how is it with you, and your daily life, your survival act? Do you live off the net? Do you have to move from home, or do you, I don't know, does acting need you to travel? How do you see that?
It really depends. Like I do most of my online stuff, I do from home. I actually, like when you watch my videos, it's like various angles of my living room. You probably see that plant. She's doing well, my plant. You see that plant sometimes. And for acting, I sometimes need to travel. So this year I was lucky enough to go to Romania. We flew. We didn't go by train or by car. So sometimes acting definitely takes me places. And Instagram takes me into Vienna because that's what I choose to show. I choose to show my city, and then I travel within my 50 square meters of an apartment.
And sometimes you also play games. We are here on Twitch. You also play games online, something like the Euro coin game.
Oh yeah, sometimes when I'm bored, there's like so many games. I am a very competitive person, and I love like trivia stuff. And there was this game that I played recently, which was a European coin game, like which euro.
I want to play the European coin game.
You can give me what you win. Thank
Please.
you. How does it work?
Oh, you just like, it shows up, like the coin shows up on your forehead, right? Like virtually. And then you have 4 seconds to answer. And if you answer right, you just get a star. Nothing else. There's like no money to be won. Just pride in your knowledge.
Okay.
That's all it is.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you do that online also. How?
Oh, sometimes I do it like in my, like when I just take my phone, like it's in your stories, or TikTok has a lot of those. Like TikTok has tons and tons of different games that you can play. It's like a little, Zeitvertreib, which I don't know what the word is. Yeah, it's a pastime. It's a pastime. Yeah.
You, and talking about coins, are you guys still using the red money? Is anybody still using the copper money? I mean,
oh no! I put it in a jar and take it to the bank once a year.
So always when I get it, I think, what the heck am I doing with it? And I think the only way to deal with this is to put it somewhere, in fact, and bring it to the bank. Are you running around with cent coins?
I am.
1 and 2 cents. Really? Are you?
Yeah, I am. And I don't have that many. I always like, when I get too many, like I ask always, can I give you the change? Like I ask the cashier. They're always super excited about the change because they never have any.
That's true.
I once, my ex-boyfriend, he used to have like jars of money, and it would be the best thing to like put everything in little rolls and then take it to the bank, and we would make like $200 out of it. That was so great because he also wouldn't want to carry around the coins, the change.
Super.
The red money, I call
Yes,
it.
the red money. Yeah, there you go.
Götz, when you traveled through Europe, you were actually on the you had a question trip, you were searching the treasure of Europe. You're searching for the smallest common denominator, or the biggest one, and you called it the cultural space, the European cultural space. How would you ever define that? You are an actress and you're part of international productions. How would you define European culture? Is there any feeling you got towards that question?
European culture. I mean, for me, is whenever I get to travel and embrace other countries' cultures. The fact that we all, like, I really resonate with the European flag. I am really proud to be European. And I think that's what European culture is that we can say, oh, you know what? It takes me 40 minutes to go to a different country and I can experience different food, different people, different architecture. I think that's a privilege that we as Europeans have that other countries don't have. From when I lived in Canada, going to a different country would take, going to the US, that would take 2.5 hours by car. And then if you want to see South America, you have to fly. Like, the distances are just so huge. So for me, the fact that we are all so close together and we can experience each other cultures and go like on vacation to Italy or to Croatia, I think even without realizing, we are kind of expanding our horizons and becoming more tolerant. I hope. I think so. So let's say that. Yeah. That's the European culture for me.
Wonderful. And Götz, how do you define it after your first road trip? Many are to come.
I'm seeking for, I call it the cultural area. But what I found out is that it's about values, and we have some certain European values that we don't share necessarily with the rest of the world, and most of us, we're not aware of that. I mean, the freedom of speech, I would say 1/3 of the world allows that, and so many other values that are connected to Europe that we take for granted. But it is Europe, and for sure we share the same history and if you're looking at the history, I mean, it's very obvious that we were fighting quite often with each other, and so the peace idea is also something that pops up quite often if you talk to people.
And actually, we are kind of almost all of us are a mixture of all of us, which is I think very funny.
Yeah.
I would like to pose a question to the both of you. Do you have any idea why the European Parliament is traveling between Brussels and Strasbourg?
Eva, that you have to answer because I know the answer, and that's not fair.
I know, you know what? Like, I know that I heard the answer a couple of days ago.
But
well, please tell us.
It's totally useless. It's freaking useless. I mean, that's for sure. And let me tell you a funny story about that I just found out, because we were talking about just a couple of days about this, because traveling, and I thought, well, you know what? Traveling, well, let's talk about the fact that the EU Parliament is traveling continuously between Strasbourg and Brussels, which is totally freaking weird. And in 2014, they did a study on that thing, and they found out it costs 110 million euros every single year. Well, now you would say, okay, 110 million euros, that's 110 million reasons to change that. But they didn't change. Obviously, they still do that. It's 2014. They did that study. Nowadays, it's 2023. What do they do? What does the European Union do? They start a new study to find out how much money it costs now. I think that is fucking ridiculous.
Eva, would you like to add something to that? Can you remember something?
About the why it travel? What do you mean? Like why it travels back and forth?
Do you have an opinion on?
No. Well, I mean, oh gosh, I don't know. I'm sure it was implemented with like good intentions. But
yeah, it was actually to give more countries a kind of the feeling of importance and being included, and that not everything is in one country.
Yeah, and as the EU is developed out of the Montan Union, and the Montan Union was set in Strasbourg, so this is why they had Strasbourg in mind originally when it came to the EU. But then the Belgians said, well, we're part of the EU as well, and we want to have a share as well. And the people in Luxembourg said, okay, you know what? But if you are having the Commission, then we will have all the administration. So the administration of the EU Parliament is not sitting in Brussels or Strasbourg. It's sitting in Luxembourg.
Well, everyone got a piece of the cake. We are talking about traveling through Europe today. We would love to hear your stories, your questions, your comments in the chat in whatever language you like. And my last question to Eva is, do you remember? I don't think you do, but I just want to hear it from you. Have you been there in the time when you needed a passport to cross borders in Europe?
Oh yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not only us.
Well, as a matter of fact, you still do need a passport in Europe. For example, now we're talking Schengen here. And Schengen is not necessarily part of the European Union, because Schengen is something that is and not every European country signed the Schengen Treaty. For example, if you're going to Romania or Bulgaria, you still, Great Britain, okay, not fair, not EU anymore. Ireland as well. So, but on the other hand, you don't have to show your passport when you're going to Switzerland or Norway. So Schengen is not necessarily the EU, and still in the EU. And nowadays we can talk, I mean, you still, because of other reasons, you definitely need your passport when you cross borders.
I'm really glad we don't have customs like the Americans.
Oh, yeah.
They are tough. You already feel like a criminal when you come to their customs on some airport.
That's true.
Well,
that's true. But I would never leave, even if I was just going within Europe. I always take my passport with me because you never know where it takes you,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah.
You never know when you will need it. You never know if you don't go any further. What if you do, then you'll need it. Yeah, I always have my passport.
All right, Ewa, any famous last words about Europe from your side? Is there any?
Hold on a second. Don't cut her short, because I want to know more about Erasmus, because I think this is a very interesting European program that you attended, and I wanted to have more information about it. Sorry, Nana.
No, please.
It was absolutely life-changing. I chose to go to France. We were not, I don't know how it works nowadays, but back then we were allowed to choose a country, and we were allowed to choose 2 options. So I chose Paris, and I think the other one was Nantes, if I don't remember correctly. And my professor was choosing then who goes where, and there were only 2 spots for, I don't know how many people applied. And Erasmus is the best thing that can happen to a European student. If you're a student, do it. It's the best experience ever. I was in Paris you apply for a semester, and then you can, I don't know how it is nowadays with the bachelor and stuff, because I'm still in the Magister Studium. So I don't know if it's a trimester or a semester. For me, it was a semester, and then I reapplied for a second one. And then you really learn very fast how to navigate in a new country, even if you don't speak the language, because you need to find accommodation, you need to know where the school is. The university lectures are in the target language. There's no English whatsoever or German. And you kind of need to find your way around. And it was the best experience ever. I can recommend it to everybody. You make new friends for life. It's awesome.
Can you actually attend the Erasmus program no matter what you're studying?
I think so, as long as you're at higher education, like university, or I'm not sure how it works for the Fachhochschulen, but at a university, I think yes. I was studying humanistische Studien, so humanist studies. So as long as I think you're able. Any public university in Europe. And then you get accredited. You get you take, they're called ECTS points. You can earn them as you're taking courses, and they were being transferred to your regular curriculum. They get accredited, and yeah, you don't lose out. I did lose a little bit of time because you do other things. You don't just study. You study a little bit less, so it took me a year longer. But yeah, you can definitely. I am not sure about which universities can or cannot, but I'm pretty sure the public universities, all of them in Europe, should be able to.
And who's funding the program? Because I know it's older than the EU, isn't it?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know. Okay.
I don't know. Is it?
I just want to find a positive thing about Europe again. You know what? We even have Erasmus, and it's financed by everybody. Something like that.
It is. I'm not sure who it's financed by. It is. I can't remember, and I don't remember when it started, but I don't know. I'd have to Google now. But
yeah, well, we can all Google.
Yeah.
Well, as far as I remember, it's EU money, so it's all of ours.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, do you have any further questions, Götz?
No. No. Yes, many, but we only have we're almost done. People have to go back to their games.
I love the last comment. As an European living in London, can't wait to rejoin. I wish Britain would be still here. That would be
that's
nice.
A horrible story.
Yeah, that's too bad.
So thank you, Ewa, for being with us. And
thank you.
Good luck and have fun in all the work fields and the regional fields that you travel through in the upcoming days and months and years.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks
for joining us.
Bye.
Bye, Ewa.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And dear Götz, you know a lot about Schengen. I know that you know it. And we come to our part that is called the European Info Box in English. Das Europäische Infokästchen. What do you know about borders and no borders and freedom and no freedom?
Well, borders don't have anything to do with Schengen. That's good. Schengen is a very small town somewhere in the Benelux, where in 1985, a couple countries decided to get rid of restrictions on borders, which made it easier to travel from France to Germany, for example. And that was in 85, but only in 95 that treaty turned into reality, and not only most of the EU countries joined, 5 didn't join. Great Britain didn't join from the very beginning. You always needed a passport to enter the British Islands, and and some other European countries didn't join: Croatia, Bulgaria, Romania. I told that before, and so ever since, it is not necessary to make border controls, but it's possible. And when we were talking about because, for example, there's always a border control between Germany and Austria, and I thought, well, don't we have Schengen? I mean, what reason is there to make a border control? And you have different reasons in Europe. For example, on the Danish border, you still have controls regularly, and their reason is terrorism. So they are afraid of terrorists coming into the country. Or most other countries are afraid of refugees, and they don't agree to the refugee politics of their neighbor country, even though it's Europe, and we have this rather ridiculous Dublin treatment that says that every refugee that enters the European Union has to stay in that country where it was first registered. So if you don't register you're landing in Italy, for example, you don't register there, and then you go to France and you register there, and then it's the first registerment, and so you stay in France. So, and the French, they don't want to have that. They don't want to have all the refugees coming to their country, and this is why they're having border controls. That is the reasons for the border controls between Austria and Germany, and also between where else have I found something? Austria has border controls between Slovenia and Hungary as well, and there is also a huge debate going on between Spain and France, which is also very funny because they closed Grenzübergänge, border checkpoints. They closed the entire checkpoints, rather small checkpoints, and now the people who are living there, they just put stones there on the street, and huge, massive stones. And now the people who are living in the villages in Spain and France, they take those huge stones back into their villages as a war trophy, so to say, which is very funny, and they mark Free Europe on it and all that. So it's funny. So they have those stones funny.
Very nice.
What else? So mainly the restrictions are because of the refugees, and I think the European community is about to find out new regulations if it comes down to that, and it's very necessary because we're facing a huge problem.
That's true.
Everybody knows that.
We've discussed it in different other episodes. Of course, we have another part of our Europe.Now episode that is a fix starter, and this is called the EU Mythbusters. And today we thought about, what kind of fear is actually existing against Europe in the connection with the European culture or regional cultures. And the big fear, I would say, I would name it Europe the Great Equalizer. So there is a fear that within the European sphere, all those regional, I don't know, specialities or dialects or specific
Condoms,
ways
say
to
it,
do
condoms. We had the
things.
condom issue before. Yes, even you
Even
have
that.
regulations on condoms. No, don't. No sweat. I'm not putting a condom over my head again.
So the big fear is that the EU might be a destroyer of culture and identities and specialities. And we did some research on different facts. I did it on French cheese. You did it, I think, on the good old cucumber question, didn't you?
Yeah, because I was on the Elbenwald festival over the weekend, which is maybe known to the community here because you have lots of cosplayers, and playing gaming is in general a huge issue. And just close by is the so-called Spreewald. Apart from actually, the Spreewald is only known for its cucumbers. I don't.
Isn't there a wald?
Well, nothing else comes into my head if I think about Spreewald apart from the cucumbers. And for sure, we had the Verordnung. The Verordnung is something else then. What's the English word? Well,
regulation?
The regulation number 1677, and that famous regulation 1677 was the regulation how far a cucumber is allowed to bend. And that was a lot of satire was going on about that. The European Union is now asking the cucumbers to grow in the right direction. But I mean, the background was totally understandable. So the industry, so the people who are buying and selling cucumbers, they wanted to A, have a better way to transport, and B, they wanted to define their product. What is the thing looking like, and what the Handelsklasse is. So if the bending of the cucumber was a bit more like that, then it was another class. Then so they needed a classification to buy and sell the product. So, but what everybody out there made out of the Gurkenregelung was that the EU is is asking the cucumbers to grow in a different way, and even the industry. So all the agricultural industry, the people who are working there, and also the people who were selling, they wanted to have it. They wanted to keep this regulation 1677, but due to the pressure of mostly politicians who say, now you can see the EU, they're doing stupid things, they got rid of that, even though everybody who was involved in that Gurken play wanted to keep it. And
cucumber play.
The cucumber play. And as a result of that, normally in the old days, the cucumbers were growing on the floor. Nowadays, cucumbers are growing horizontally, that the cucumber can grow straight.
I never heard
Again,
that. Thank you for that. This is the big moment of this episode. Wow. And another big moment is that the Elbenwald is also known for little rivers. Thank you so much.
Yeah, the Spreewald,
Spreewald, that is it, yeah. And I think there must be forest somewhere. Anyway, two more examples of the wrong accusation of the European Union unifying all the regions and norms and cultures is concerning cheese. One is concerning cheese, one is concerning marmalade. Cheese. This rumor started actually already in the 1990s, last century, and especially was having high waves in France because they thought there would be coming a law or regulation that the EU would be requiring all cheeses to be pasteurized. And this still, at that time, it was just a rumor. Artisan cheeses, they still exist. They are made from raw milk. But of course, some of them carry wonderful risks like listeria or salmonella. So there are quite strict European hygienic rules on raw milk products. Some of those rules are the need for immediate processing or a strict cooling circle, and very clear labeling, because for some, as we know, pregnant people, they are not allowed to eat that. So another example is the marmalade discussion. We had it in Austria pretty strong because we love our marmelade. And it's not Konfitüre, this is German. We never say Konfitüre. So we had a real high agitated discussion about that topic. And this, as we might all know, it came from the Brits, because their marmalade is only made from lemons and oranges. And so their marmalade is jam. So what we call marmelade is their jam. So anyway, now it's all back to normal. That's what I want to say. So there's no need for any EU myth about that.
And coming back, by the way, to the Gurken situation, for example, all the in 2009 they got rid of that regulation, but everybody is still using it. I mean, if for example, Lidl is buying cucumbers from the producer, they want to have Handelsklasse A or premium or whatever, and referring to that regulation. So a big fuzz, almost like with the marmalade and the jam, a big fuzz out of nothing.
So to wrap it up, what did Europe ever do for us concerning traveling? So we have the freedom to travel, the freedom to work wherever we want. We have the freedom. What would you say? What did Europe ever do for us concerning traveling? And
well, are you asking me? Or are you asking the audience or the?
I'm asking everyone, because it's our
roaming. Yeah, we can use our telephones all over the place. We can use our money all over the place. We don't. It doesn't cost money to use my credit card in another country.
Oh,
that changed, by the way.
Cool.
So many things. I mean, and most of the times we're not even aware that it changed, which is sad.
We all take it for granted, yes. Yeah. Easy traveling, taking it for granted. Well, we have 1 hour. And is there any very important issue, my dear Götz, that you would like to add at the top of the hour, as we used to say in radio?
Well, top of the hour. Well, there are so many things. But it's not the one thing I just want to let loose. Okay. After 1 hour, I'm allowed to make a German English joke, okay?
Götz is having fun.
Okay, no. What about you, Nana? Do you have anything?
Oh, I'm happy. I'm thankful. I love our new logo. Thanks to Dan and Steffen. It's great and wonderful. And we were just chatting this hour, so we tried to take it easy and try to not overweigh our dear audience with information. So I hope you had fun with us, and we are still exploring Europe. When will you go on the road again with your?
That's a very good question, because I will start a new project pretty soon, and I don't have the shooting schedule yet, and it always depends on the shooting schedule when I have spare time to travel Europe.
So then, I wish everyone a wonderful summer. See you perhaps again on the 13th of September, where we will do a live comment, Dirk van den Boom and me, on the State of the Union speech of Ursula von der Leyen. And dear Götz, I hope I see you soon, and have a lovely time. Thanks for being here with us. No, Europe.Now is not the successor of More Europe.Now. It's two different formats, because it has two different co-experts. Europe.Now is with Götz, and More Europe.Now is with Dirk. Thank you for the question. Thank you.
Ja, Nana, vielen Dank. Und vielen Dank da draußen, dass ihr so eifrig gepostet habt. See you soon. Go Europe.
Hallo, ich bin Götz Otto und mit meiner alten Feuerwehr unterwegs durch Europa. Ich habe als Schauspieler schon in vielen europäischen Orten arbeiten dürfen, habe mit vielen Kollegen vor Ort gesprochen, mich ausgetauscht und Zeit verbracht. Über die Bedeutung Europas für uns als Kulturschaffende haben wir uns dabei nicht unterhalten. Denn Wenn man Menschen fragt, was Europa für sie definiert, dann gibt es eine Sache, auf die sich alle einigen können: den gemeinsamen Kulturraum. Aber was macht den aus? Was ist europäische Kultur? Welche Rolle spielt sie für uns alle? Also habe ich mich auf den Weg gemacht. Ich suche Verbindendes und Trennendes. Vor allem aber möchte ich Lust machen auf das europäische Projekt. Ich frage Menschen, die mir unterwegs begegnen.
What do you like about Europe? Freedom. Yeah, freedom.
I love to entertain people, make people smile, make people laugh. That also makes me feel good.
You made me smile and laugh.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Und ich unterhalte mich mit Menschen, die Spannendes über Europa oder europäische Entwicklungen erzählen können.
Das ist ein schönes Beispiel dafür, wie die Energiewelt sich auch wandelt.
It's also Europe. That's for me punk. Freedom. Eh? Do whatever you want.
If you would be king of Europe, well, let's say
I would be queen
the
because-
leader. Oh, well, yeah, queen too.
Oder mit Menschen, mit denen ich schon arbeiten durfte.
It's so deep in ourselves. It has to do with history, a lot to do with history. That's what I discovered when I moved to Belgium.
Well, if Belgium is the answer, what was the question?
Jetzt geht Europa unter die Haut.
Denn ich finde Europa großartig. Als Friedens- und Gesellschaftsprojekt.
Yeah, hurt me.
Unterwegs mit Götz Otto in Europa. Go Europe!